Hi, I'm Doug Rendy. I'm the CEO and president of Shapes Unlimited. We are a manufacturing and distribution company of aluminum components, primarily to the building and construction industry. Doors, windows, fencing, railing, and a whole host of other applications. Shapes Unlimited is a long-standing member of the Youngstown, Warren, Ohio community. We've been in business for upcoming 30 years. And why I'm addressing you is I never thought I'd have to, but there's a prevailing sort of lack of understanding to the impact that these burdensome tariffs are having on small business and the end consumer. If we believe, certainly as I do, that the U.S. economy is built on small business, then we've got to understand what are the implications associated with what has happened really over the past now 9 months in terms of the gradual shift of the application of tariffs and who pays for them. In May of this year, there was a universal application of 50% tariffs on aluminum from anywhere in the world. That grew from 10% in the latter part of 2024 to 25% in the first quarter, as indicated to 50% in June of this year. And the impact of that is astounding because aluminum and steel, for many different reasons, literally from 1980 to today, has been an under-subsidized category of product in the U.S. economy. And as we all know, steel and aluminum go into cars, the automotive industry, into the military, and obviously into building materials and construction. But the facts in the case are that since 1980, there's been a dramatic shift because of a lack of attention to this production and this manufacturing capacity. How so? Well, in 1980, the U.S. producers were able to produce 4.6 million metric tons of aluminum materials and had 30 different smelters. A smelter takes raw bauxite and then heats it, forms it into billets. Billets then get formed into aluminum, in our particular case, componentry, that go into a whole host of applications. So 4.6 million metric tons of production and 30 smelters domestically. Today, it's less than 1 million metric tons and 4 domestic smelting production facilities. What's that mean? It means that there's over a 540 million metric ton shortfall of domestic production capacity. And why? Because again, since 1980, all of that production went everywhere else in the world, to China, to India, to the Middle East, and all different parts of the world. And in that time frame, when we chose not to underwrite the continued need for these materials, the market opportunity in terms of production capacity and the application of it has grown tenfold throughout the world. And the impact of that is that these other countries, these other manufacturers, were able to invest significantly in the latest automation of production. So the administration today might think, well, it's all because they've got low costs of labor. Most of it is now automated, using highly automated robotic equipment that takes the human piece out of it. So if the intent of the application of 50% tariffs, wherever it's produced, to the U.S. market, we are paying for it. Me as a manufacturer and you as a consumer. How are you paying for it? It's showing up in the cost of goods. It's raising the cost of automobiles, it's raising the cost of housing, and it's raising the cost of all of these materials that go into building a home. And what's the impact of that more specifically? Well, for a company like Shapes, the good news is that, again, a 30-year company that's historically been very profitable. We've averaged a 25% compounded annual growth rate, and last year a 70% EBITDA improvement. This year, the impact of these tariffs have cost this company alone $4.6 million of unintended costs. Those costs, part of it, can be moved into pricing, but not all of it. And we thought we were smart. We thought we were smart. We knew the new administration was going to take a very aggressive approach on these sorts of trade issues. But what we didn't expect is that it was going to be a fire-ready aim approach without clearly any knowledge of the intended and unintended consequences. And if they did understand those things, then it really doesn't make sense at all, because we, again, pay for it. So what's the further impact of that? Well, we, again, Shapes Unlimited, attempted to get ahead of that curve. We shifted a lion's share of our production capacity to new providers of material out of Southeast Asia, not China, to the Middle East, in advance of the expectations that China, Southeast Asia was going to be more punished in terms of the application of tariffs. What we didn't expect, it was going to be universally applied across all countries at 50%. Hence the $4+ million burden as a small company that we're bearing. And maybe the big companies, maybe the U.S. Steel's now part of Nippon Steel out of Japan, thanks to, again, the new administration, can underwrite some of those expenses. I would argue that it's further limiting their opportunities to invest carefully and properly in new and different production capacity. I would further argue that that particular issue, in terms of the quality of the equipment, the processes that are now antiquated here domestically, recently caused a tragic loss of life in a plant in Pittsburgh. So what's the result? Further results are, if you want to address this issue, the equipment alone to give you the most productive, the most efficient production capacity in the latest automated machinery is a 36-month putt. Because to get the equipment, to get the equipment installed, to get your employees trained, takes at least that period of time. And if you want to add domestic smelting capacity, that's 10 years. That's over $1 billion worth of investment. So what's been the impact? You've heard from Shapes, that is painful. In fact, it's near devastating. And it's not getting any better. And to the U.S. market alone, to the consumer, again, it's adding $2,100 of unintended costs by the end of 2027 to the average U.S. household. That's over $2,000 of money that they can't spend. And what's the other impact of that? Well, regardless if you believe the numbers, and some don't, but the labor rate and jobs are going down. The reforecast with a new person running the numbers are showing that there's fewer jobs available and there's a higher unemployment rate. And what we know is that it's impacting housing starts, both single family and multi-unit. And those costs are further adding burden to the dream of the average consumer being able to buy a home. So all of those things are the intended, in some respects, and unintended consequences associated with this issue of tariffs. So what can be done? Well, I would posit that it would make a great deal of sense to roll back the tariffs and specifically orient them to, if you will, the administration's view of offending countries, not globally. And in doing so, roll back some of the considerations associated with that and provide some other incentives to manufacturers like us and others to be able to invest in the latest innovations and material and equipment. We're spending, as Shapes, $4 million ourselves to automate some of these processes to lower costs, but are getting no help from the government. We've knocked on doors. We've gone to Washington, D.C. We've talked to local state senators and congresspersons. All of them are saying, just wait. It's going to get better. Well, a company under $100 million can't wait. They can't absorb $4, $6, $8 million of unintended costs. And the lack of action is truly attributable to fear. No one wants to make a move. No one wants to necessarily poke the bear in Washington and make the right decisions on behalf of their constituents. But we have to. We've got to do things and quickly to address the circumstance. So again, what can be done? Not only rolling back, applying them to specific countries where it makes sense and lowering them more significantly to those that are not offending, if you will. And we, Shapes, are working with our global suppliers to give them some insight as to what the benefit could and should be if they were to develop U.S. manufacturing capacity. And yet, state, local, federal government are not willing to make commitments to them to add thousands of jobs, to invest hundreds of millions of dollars, because they're not giving them any consideration for tax incentives, training incentives, or rolling back any and all of the tariffs. So they're saying, why should I come to the United States if you're going to continue to treat me like a second-class citizen? So what are they doing? There's enough global demand everywhere else in the world. They're shifting their production capacity to support the Middle East, to South America, and to Southeast Asia. There's enough demand. At the same time, there's 4.7 million metric tons of intended opportunity in the construction industry alone for aluminum. And we won't have the materials at the right cost to be able to fulfill that demand. So it's a conundrum. So back to, why am I taking the initiative to put myself on video, potentially upset the administration and local officials? Because I'm mad as hell and I can't take it anymore. And I think something has to be done. And if an individual can state the case with facts, undeniable facts, that support the case that the burden of these issues, of the intended or unintended consequences, are falling on the backbone of industry, small business, and falling on the backbone and pocketbooks of the end consumer. So it's time to do something. Get heads out of the sand, understand that steel and aluminum are a big piece of the continuing growth and opportunity for the U.S. economy. And the lack of commitment to these categories will continue to further burden housing costs, minimize, again, the U.S. economy's benefit in terms of having the right breadth of manufacturing capacity, and further limit the investments necessary to keep pace with the rest of the world. So let's do something about it. Anything that I can do to further answer these questions, you'll find my information as part of the video content here. But thank you for listening, and appreciate your hoped-for awareness to what is truly the issue. Thank you.